My name is Bob Sandford, and I hold the Global Water Futures Chair in Water and Climate Security at the United Nations University Institute of Water, Environment, and Health. I am also the author of Our Vanishing Glaciers, The Snows of Yesteryear, and The Future Climate of the Mountain West. Thank you very much for the invitation to participate with this distinguished panel on this webinar. We in the Canadian West live in some of the most impressive natural features on Earth. Many of these are protected within the UNESCO Canadian Rocky Mountain Parks World Heritage Site. One of the most spectacular of these is the Columbia Icefield. By any standard, the Columbia Icefield is a stunning geographical feature. It is a high basin of accumulated snow and ice that straddles some 220 square kilometers of the Great Stone Divide that separates British Columbia from Alberta. It is one of the last places in Canada where weather and water interact in exactly the same way they did during the last ice age. What makes this icefield truly unique, however, is its accessibility. At the Athabasca Glacier in Jasper National Park, you can literally get out of your car and in a few moments walk directly back into the Pleistocene, a colder epoch in the Earth's history when much of North America was buried deep beneath 2 kilometers of glacial ice. There's a different sense of time here. Fleeting hours hardly matter. The day seems the smallest unit of time, the season the next, then the year. Beyond that, there is only the timelessness of epochs. Beyond the experience of the utterly monumental in nature, even a brief visit to the Columbia Icefield teaches us that water is a central element in determining what the surface of the Earth was like at any given moment in its history. The Columbia Icefield is a place water comes to be reborn. It is where all three phases of water, solid, liquid, and vapor, coexist and interact. This range between -40 and +40 degrees Celsius is absolutely critical to tolerable climate variability and to life processes on this planet. And at the center of that range is the freezing point of water. Because water likes it up here so much, it's no surprise that these mountains are the water towers for much of Western North America. The melting of snow in the spring and the melting of glaciers in the summer has provided water security for much of the West, including the prairies, which in places are so dry they contribute no water to local rivers. It should be no surprise then that the Columbia Icefield is also famous as another divide, a hydrologic divide. This sea of stone and snow is the headwaters of the three greatest rivers of the West. The Saskatchewan Glacier is the headwaters of the North Saskatchewan River. The Columbia Icefield and Columbia Glacier are the headwaters of the Peace, Athabasca, Mackenzie River system, which is so big that it rivals the St. Lawrence in scale and has been called Canada's cold Amazon. The glaciers pouring down the west slopes of the Great Divide from the Columbia Icefield nourish the Columbia River, once known as the Great River of the West, in honor of how all life relied on its waters. Not enough snow is falling, however, in our now warming winters, and much of it, and too much of it, is melting away during the longer, hotter summers to sustain our mountain glaciers. The Columbia Icefield is seen to have lost as much as a third of the area prescribed to it in the 1990s. We don't yet know its volume, but we do know that many of the Columbia Icefield glaciers are shrinking in extent and thinning in depth at a rapid rate. And if you consider glacial ice as water in the bank, so to speak, we don't have as much as we thought, and it's disappearing far faster than we could ever imagine. Recent research demonstrates just how rapidly our climate is warming. Through the efforts of the IP3 Research Group and the Western Canadian Cryospheric Network, we now know that we may have lost as many as 300 glaciers in the Canadian Rocky Mountain parks alone between 1920 and 2005. The point that I would like to leave you with is that the hydrology of the entire West is changing and changing fast. It should be noted also that the loss of glacial ice is a symptom of a much larger problem. The same warming that is causing our glaciers to disappear so quickly is reducing snowpack and the duration and extent of snow cover through the mountain west. Snowpack and snow cover have been declining by 17% per decade. By mid-century, the Canadian West will be as changed by this as it was by European settlement. The problem you will have to manage in your lifetimes is that you have to see and understand this hydrologic change. I've been invited to conclude with final thoughts on what is happening, and to do so in about 1 minute. Let me begin with a question. Why is it that every disaster movie begins with a scientist being ignored? For young people listening to this, you should never doubt that you can make a difference. You may not yet have a lot of experience, but you are smart, clear-sighted, and connected. You have the power to reshape the world, and I'm afraid that you must. The world we have left you is not enough for you. You must decide upon and then create the world you want. There are a number of things that you can do now. Because the global atmosphere is warming, Canada's hydrology has already begun to change. We need to dispel the myth of limitless abundance of water in Canada, and we need to do it now. To make change possible, each of us needs to know where the water that comes out of our taps comes from, how much we use, and what we use it for, and what condition it is restored to the water course from which it was drawn. But most of all, we need to realize that water is going to be more precious in the future than we can even begin to imagine today, and act accordingly. Over to you, Ali.